Ravens beginning their season against the Buffalo Bills, and of course the Orioles playing for their playoff lives in Detroit and Boston over the next week. Excitement abounds on your television, and here to talk about it, our official media examiner. He is the Word Man DC on Twitter, longtime DC chief and executive producer of News and Sports at Sports Talk Florida, and a Baltimore resident as well, a multi-Emmy award-winning television producer and director. We welcome Jim Williams back onto the program, the Word Man DC. What's up, Jimmy? Happy fall to you, man.
Hey, happy fall to you. We had a wonderful opening week of college football. I think if you're a college football fan, you couldn't ask for a better weekend of entertainment. I mean, it was all over the place with so many games that were close and so many, quote-unquote super teams that got knocked out of the block pretty early.
Yeah, well, for these college programs that are trying to raise revenue, for television that's trying to capture Labor Day weekend, I remember college football always being, it was the weekend you played the Little Sisters of the Poor, Pacific, or Broken Pelvis State or whatever.
Right.
And I remember Maryland being in that kickoff game against Notre Dame up at Giant Stadium. They had their kickoff thing. Now these kickoff games and these neutral sites have really become huge business for communities. I mean, I know Marty Conway and I talked about if Baltimore were to become a place that would do that every year instead of that stupid race that they tore the city apart and cost me as a taxpayer millions of dollars, it would be nice to see a Notre Dame or an LSU or a Ohio State, whomever, come and play a game. It's interesting business for Jerry Jones, for Lambeau Field, for Orlando. Even in Sydney, Australia, they were playing games last weekend. Give me the model on that as you see it, because there's the downside if you're Auburn and take a game and lose, if you're Notre Dame and lose, if you're LSU and you lose, right?
Right. Or if you're Oklahoma and you lose.
Sure.
Yeah, which is what happened to them this week. So, anyway, the model behind it is basically, as we all know, the situation with college football is now that you get penalized if you do play one of what we used to call the directional teams, South Alabama or something like that.
Yeah, Auburn's wondering why they took that game at this point. So's Ole Miss, I'm sure, right?
Yeah. So anyway, when things got down to scheduling. And this happened just a couple of years ago when Baylor and TCU were thought to be, possible entrance into the championship situation, and then at the last week, Ohio State, jumped them and ended up in the Final Four, and neither TCU or Baylor was able to be, in the playoffs. It was in large part they looked at strength of schedule and they said, well, wait, come on, Baylor and TCU played some pretty, simple teams like North Texas and some of those teams, and these other guys played competitive games all the way down through the schedule, and so they were penalized for their schedule. So two things happen here: one, you get a bowl game for all intents and purposes to kick off the season, and secondly, you get an opportunity to automatically eliminate somebody. And I think that's the entertainment part.
The entertainment part is if you lose in college football in any week, your season's kind of wrecked, right?
But lose early. I mean,
of course.
That's the key. If you're going to lose early. And Oklahoma's losing to Houston. While to many people wasn't much of a surprise, it now means that the number 3 team in the country going into that game is not going to be the number 3 team in the country, and they're going to have to, fight their way to make it happen in the Big 12. At the same time, conversely, Texas, who is trying to build on their resume, they weren't even in the top 20, ends up beating Notre Dame, and now they become the team that everybody has to beat in the Big 12. So it was a very entertaining situation, being so much from the fact that you have these games that mean something, literally the first game you play.
Well, this is obviously an NFL community, Jim Williams, and everyone's on purple notice this week, and all eyes on Joe Flacco and the Buffalo Bills coming to town. But really, for television and for the industry of sports and sports media, this is Christmas. This is the beginning of the gold rush for anyone that's in my line of work, because the NFL really does dominate all of this, and whether it's fantasy play or all of the gambling aspects that went on last year and have gone on from the beginning of time, as well as the jurisprudence part of who's playing and who's not playing. This is the glorious week for at least 20 or 25 teams to think we can go to the Super Bowl this year.
Sure. I mean, you're absolutely right. It starts on a Thursday. It ends on a doubleheader. The only time it happens is during the year on Monday night. And it's very entertaining. I know that Ravens fans are chomping at the bit because last year was a very uncharacteristic Ravens season. And I know they're hoping for bigger and better things, and it all begins, against a Buffalo team that I don't know that anybody really knows what the heck is going to happen there with that team. They could beat you, or they could lose by 40 points.
I spent the week over in Europe and running around Germany, and I know I was in the right country for the NFL. The NFL had their World League there, had some success in Frankfurt and the Rhine Fire, and places where I know the name of the team, right? I know the team's nickname, and it's been sort of long gone, and it was an experiment over there. But let me tell you what, I spent 5 days in Germany, and there was nowhere I went where I did not see NFL stuff, whether it was in Frankfurt, whether it was in Cologne. I went to a Billy Joel concert. I went to a soccer game. I walked around shops and saw Raiders gear and Dallas Cowboys and Redskins and Bears stuff. There is an NFL television element in Germany that even spending time with the man who saved my wife's life and his brother, they love the NFL. They watch the NFL. Those games come on Sunday night at 7 o'clock in Germany, and people really do watch it over there. We would never realize that here.
Yeah, that in the UK as well. It's there. The presence is really there, and it's not just expats. It's people who
speak
went
German,
out, as you said, and watched when the World League played, and they miss it. They miss their teams, they miss their players, and so it's become an entertainment standpoint for them as well. So yeah, you're right. I mean, there's certain parts, obviously, if you go to Spain, Italy, France, probably not as much.
Disappears, sure.
Germany for sure, and definitely the UK, because frankly, that's where the two most successful groups of franchises really were.
He is Jim Williams. He is the Word Man DC on Twitter and our unofficial official media examiner. Here's a media examination that I want you to make. How many years have you lived in Baltimore now, Jim?
7
years, and you've lived in various places, and you remember the Orioles at 33rd Street, and now you remember McCamden Yards. The empty stadium for you and the optics of it, and you and I have talked at length about how much money Masson is generating, and it's hundreds of millions of dollars. I think the fans are a little up in arms. I feel like the business downtown, no one counts on Peter Angelos to help them. He's disappeared. He's been the worst steward we could possibly imagine, really, over the 25 years for that franchise. And now the stadium's empty in the middle of a pennant race, and people are all asking why. So, I'll give you the forum on this. I mean, you're the media guy, and you've seen full stadiums and empty stadiums, and no one I know knows more about the advancement of modern media and the money behind it. It really has become sort of a backdrop that Peter makes so much money off the television that selling bags of peanuts, while it's nice, and selling tickets while it's a nice optic, it's not really the core part of their business.
I'm going to quote a friend of mine who you and I are looking to chat with soon, and that's Dallas Mavericks owner Mark Cuban. Now, Mark got criticized a while back when he said, "I don't need fans, I have fans. I need corporate partners." And while that was taken to be crass and in some regards, blasphemy, Mark was right.
Fans are worth pennies. Sponsors are worth dollars, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sponsors are worth lots of dollars.
Well, the Orioles don't have a lot of sponsors now. I mean, that would really be one of the telling parts of this, which is, as Marty Conway said, one of the reasons those seats are empty is companies here have quit on the Orioles. Right. Companies have said, I'm not giving you $10,000 to buy 4 season ticket books that nobody in my world's using.
Well, that you can't give the tickets away.
Or that they have no value to a
Right.
client, to an employee, to an employee's family, or to someone you like, right?
Hmm. I think that what we're seeing happening with the Orioles is just, again, people sit at home and watch, but they're not inclined to go. And I know that for myself, as silly as it sounds, I like Camden Yards. It's probably one of the nicest ballparks in the country to sit and watch a baseball game. And I probably can count on my two hands the times in 7 years I've been down there, which it's only 20 minutes from my house to get there, and I've had ample opportunities.
Yeah, and
to
it
go.
only costs $15, 20 on the bad night. I mean, for people to say it costs a lot of money,
No,
I
it
mean,
doesn't.
I think it costs more than it used to cost, and I'm okay
Yeah.
with all that. And I'm a guy that was spending $4 on 24-ounce beers in soccer stadiums in Germany the other day, and seeing a whole different side of like how they treat the customer there versus and I'm writing about it this week. I'm writing at length about it. It's almost like Angelos has used the human beings here and the customers as his own ATM, and now there's a point where people are saying, it's not a value proposition for me because it is on for free at home, and I don't have to go down there. And whatever the excuse is, whether it's the weather, my kids are in school, I'm afraid of the riots, the cost, whatever that is, they're not going, and we're all trying to scratch our head and say, well, why? And I guess there are a bunch of reasons why people aren't going.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no question that baseball, unlike a number of different other, and largely because you have 81 home games, has done a very good job, and the Orioles in that same realm by doing the Friday date nights that they've done in the past, and you've got the family pack situations where for the same price, about the same price that you would go to a movie or something like that for a typical family night out, you can still go to the ballpark. I really believe that because ratings have been up on the Orioles standpoint. So I really believe people are just enjoying the game, watching it from home, and not taking the opportunity to go down and be part of it. And that's kind of an odd circumstance because normally when a team is good, you're going to draw.
Well, it is worrisome, right? I mean, that winning, their arrogance, and believe me, I'm putting a huge list of all of the things that I have observed here over 25 years, but the arrogance of them to say when they stunk for 14 years, when we win, you won't be able to get a ticket. You'll be begging us to get inside the stadium when we win. Boy, that has not wound up playing out. It really hasn't.
Well, if you look down the street, the Nationals are averaging a little over 32,000 a game in a building that, for all intents and purposes, as solid as anything north of 38,000.
And they're building a brand from nothing. They have no Brooks Robinsons, no Jim Palmers. They have nothing other than Walmart hat or Walgreens hats, as I should say, right?
And remember that, and it's not hard to remember, that the Nationals, for for all of their success, is the Orioles have their television rights. So look at the fact that the success of the Nationals are actually benefiting the Orioles.
In a big way, and there's
in a massive way.
And there's a much larger space there for the growth of the brand of the Nationals than there is for the Orioles because the Orioles have had a 60-year head start, and look at the stands, and they have great players, and they have an interesting manager, and they have a chance to win, and they're playing top-notch competition, whether it's Toronto or Boston.
They're spending money on players.
These are the things. It's been 10 years now. 2 weeks from now, it'll be 10 years since I did the walkout on Angelos, and of course 10 years since he took my press credentials. And these were the things I wrote about 10 years ago, which was be careful. The city's empty right now, but the reason that stadium was built was to increase the tax base, to fill up hotel rooms, to fill up restaurants, to create tax revenue for the city, and that has been, quite frankly, a big ruse here 20, 25 years later with Camden Yards being built because unless people are going to go down and participate, and for whatever reason they're not participating, I think it should be a civic discussion for downtown Baltimore.
Well, there's one other thing, and maybe you can answer this for me. You know, when you're not winning, okay, and we've covered teams that have not won.
A lot of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, Angelos has owned the team for 20. This is his 24th summer. They've made the playoffs 4 times.
Right.
So
Well,
that's just a fact. Yes.
I'm just going. I'll use the Cleveland Cavaliers as an example. Back when I used to do this Cavaliers, one of the things that they would do is we would promote the living daylights when we were on the road doing television about, hey, the Lakers are coming town, the Reds, the Boston Celtics are coming, the Bulls are coming with Michael Jordan. You want to see the Nasty Boys from Detroit? They're going to be here. The irony is that here you've got a team that's playing either in first or second place. Sometimes they slide down to third, but that's not that far back. Within a 3-game period.
But this is an honest-to-God pennant race, which we have not had in this city. Literally.
You gotta fight, and you're pitching, hey, the Yankees are in town, or the Red Sox are in town, and you're not selling out when the Yankees and the Red Sox are in town. And, basically, you look up, and there's a ton of Red Sox fans and Yankees fans in the building, but still it's not sold out.
Well, I mean, and this speaks to what I do for a living over 25 years, where people say, well, hey, Nasty, why don't you take phone calls anymore? Well, I'll be really frank with you. The phone calls sucked. And what I see on Facebook and on Twitter and what I see written about the team has no intelligence to it. I mean, there were people last week saying, I have to come out and spend my money to show Baltimore pride. Well, where was the Baltimore pride when they took the name off the jerseys, for crying out loud? That's what this owner did. And my memory for all of that, and not just my personal experience of how poorly the Angelos family has treated the Aparicio family and the WNST listeners and my employees and all of that over the years, but it really does come down to why are we going to the game? What are we getting out of it? And what is our level of buy-in to when the Orioles lose, I feel like a family member lost. And we certainly have that with the Ravens. If the Ravens lose to the Bills on Sunday, no one's going to want to go to work on Monday. The Orioles don't engender across all facets of our municipality that feeling anymore, that Brooks and Palmer and Boog and those guys made our families feel that way in the 60s and 70s and 80s. It's been very apparent for a quarter of a century. This thing has been run, quite frankly, like a Greek diner. And people like me have been said, well, if you don't like it, then just don't come. Brady Anderson looked my wife in the eye and told my wife and I, we should leave Baltimore if we don't like the Orioles. And I'm like, who the hell are you, dude? That's the kind of arrogance that people have been treated with, and then they've raised the ticket prices and done a whole bunch of other business-related things. But it's really a shame. It's sad to see baseball become not important in our community.
But, I'll say this. I mean, again, even though I have been down to the ballpark, not that much, but...
You're part of the problem, not the solution.
Exactly. I will say this. You've got some really good guys, some really nice people, starting with Buck Showalter's not a bad guy. You've got Manny Machado, possibly one of the best young players without question in baseball. One of the most exciting, Chris Davis. I mean,
Adam Jones. There's J.J. Hardy. There are reasons to go to the game.
Quality people, and they're all nice guys, and they're worthy of cheering for. And so,
but somehow they're not. But somehow people aren't reaching in their pockets for $20 and saying, I want to see you beat the Blue Jays. I want to see you beat the Yankees. I don't know that there's any fast answer to this.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you, but I was just going to say, there's one point that you made a couple of minutes ago, and that is they are in a pennant race. And you know what? There might not be anything more exciting in sports than a pennant race. In baseball. I mean, it's, because every day is a grind, and every day, whether you feel good or don't feel good or whatever, you got to get up and you got to play at the best of your ability, because if you don't, you won't be playing in October.
Yeah, I mean, it's days of our lives. It happens every day, unlike Knots Landing, which only happened once a week, right? So it's a different kind of soap opera, but it is an incredible investment of time, and now not cheap to go to the ballpark anymore. We're going to continue to examine that this week. Jim Williams is our unofficial official media examiner. He is the Word Man DC out on Twitter, and a 7-time Emmy Award-winning producer and director, talking about television and, hey, U.S. Open's big business too, right? I mean, from the
absolutely.
tennis community here, we all watch Wimbledon, the French Open, and Roland Garros, and Australia happens in the middle of the night, in the middle of the football playoffs. But the U.S. Open is sort of synonymous with this time of the year and this first week of football season. And I know you've worked many of them, and seeing Serena go out there and seeing Nadal, just seeing these legends sort of be at the tail end at this point. I guess we're all wondering who's going to be the next torchbearer, right?
Right, and I think the fun part of the U.S. Open is it's the most, other than the Australian, which is close, it's the most boisterous. The crowd is very American. It's very, loud, and while they're quiet when they're supposed to be quiet for the most part, when somebody does something amazing, they just absolutely, that place sounds like M&T Bank Stadium when the Ravens score a touchdown. I mean, it's a crazy atmosphere. It's a fun atmosphere, especially the nighttime games. I mean, everything played at night. The crowd is really crazy, and it's fun. And I know a lot of people. You can get tickets and go up on the bus. I mean, from Baltimore if you want to. And it's worth going to if you've never been to a tennis event, because it's unlike any other tennis event you're ever going to go to.
Yeah, I went in 1986. I saw Ivan Lendl play. I saw Chris Evert, Martina Navratilova, Helena Sikova, Boris Becker, Ivan Isavic. I mean, I remember that. I remember the weekend I was there. I saw semifinals in New York, and it was when the Mets were on fire. It was '86, right? I mean, so it was that magical sort of era. But I haven't been back, and I've been to the French Open once in '99, and I do like tennis. It's just the U.S. Open falls at a very inopportune time for me. Springsteen's usually touring. Football's about to get into gear. But I do enjoy watching it. We love watching tennis, and I do love the atmosphere. It feels like an American tennis event. It feels like a loud, boisterous tennis event.
Real quick, one quick story about the U.S. Open. I can't remember the exact year, but McEnroe was still relevant, and John comes into the press room, and we're getting ready to do an interview with him for CBS, but he's doing his bit first with the press, and just as we're sitting there waiting, he turns over, and you're talking about being New Yorker. Well, John is a huge Mets fan, and Murray Chass was there. And he looks at Murray and he goes, "Hey, Murray." He says, "Yeah." He says, "You were scorekeeper at the Mets game the other." Now, this is when McEnroe was actually playing tennis. He still watched the Mets game. And he says to Murray Chass, he goes, "You gave Hernandez an error on a ball that was impossible for him to catch. What are you talking? How did you do this?" So McEnroe, instead of talking about tennis, spends 10 minutes, basically bitching at Murray Chass for giving Keith Hernandez an error on a play that he didn't think he deserved. And we're sitting there going, this is funny.
Well, that's McEnroe. Like, the ball was clearly on the line, right?
Exactly. and we still like the Fios commercial where they go, "Yeah, I see you, so you can tell whether it's in or out." Yeah, I like that.
The Rio Olympics now over with. The Paralympics are going on, and I have struck up this strange friendship with Jessica Long over the course of years, and took her out to Ravens camp a couple of years ago, and her medals were so heavy, Ray Lewis and Ray Rice couldn't wear them. They were weighing them down. The Paralympic Games, I think a lot of folks were worried that was just going to sort of fall off the map. And I know around the world, the Paralympic Games are an incredibly big deal. In America, it sort of falls off unless you happen to know someone competing like I do.
Yeah, I mean, it's terribly unfair that they don't at least put together some sort of coverage. I mean, you wouldn't expect them to cover it as they cover the traditional Olympic Games, but some sort of at least daily wrap-up show, or put it on, NBCSN, or something. It's silly because I also watch a lot of British television, and the BBC, the first thing they put out was, ITV. The first thing they put out is that they were covering, Paralympics, and start with Wednesday night's, opening ceremony. So, I mean, it's something they should do but don't, and the fact that it is already available to the rest of the world because of the national pool feed that is put out by the IOC. I mean, it could be produced cheaply, because all you'd have to do is keep your announcers here and not do any of it. But it's sadly something that NBC, Comcast, Universal, and their group has chosen for whatever reason not to even look at.
Well, it's also an incredibly busy time of the year here with college football and the NFL and tennis and baseball and pennant races and all that good stuff going on. Jim Williams joining us here. He's the Word Man DC out on Twitter. Always great to visit with you, my friend. Happy football season to you. And I know there's you're getting your thumb worn out with the remote control at this time of year, right?
Indeed, I am, yes. But good luck to the Ravens on Sunday, and I hope everybody, enjoys the game and nobody gets hurt.
I'm along for the purple ride. That's all I can say. You can follow him at WordmanDC out on Twitter. You can find me out on WNST on our Twitter feed as well as my personal Twitter feed, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and nasty at WNST.net always reaches me. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Taos in Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.